Hi, everybody. My name is Matt. I am a biologist with Point Reyes National Seashore, and I'm grateful to be here tonight to share a little bit about the western snowy plover. In this presentation, I'll show you their habitat, tell you about their breeding biology, discuss why they're so vulnerable, and discuss about ways that you can help. So to begin to understand the story of the snowy plover, let's take a trip to the beach. So feel free to close your eyes and imagine yourself standing in the wet sand here. Take a couple of deep breaths of that fresh ocean air. You're in Point Reyes National Seashore, and it's a bright, warm, sunny day, very little wind. The waves are gently crashing onto the shoreline. All around you, you may not sense it, but the beach is alive. There are organisms living their daily life just beyond your view. A sand crab the size of your thumb wiggles in and out of the wet sand, trying to hide itself from any gulls that might eat it. A sand wasp hovers around just above the ground, eagerly looking for prey hiding in the sand. And just 50 feet away from you, an inconspicuous small plover is sitting on a nest, watching intently, trying to assess your intentions. You pull out binoculars and see this, a plover nest on hatching day. So you can see one adult plover who is a male and 3 chicks. The second one just popped out there. The 2 chicks who you see testing out their new legs and getting their bearings probably hatched about 2 hours ago or a couple hours ago. And if you look closely, you can see that one is still hatching right there underneath the male. You'll notice that the adult male is brooding, which means he's keeping that chick warm. And around them, you can actually see a nest exclosure, which basically is chicken wire surrounding the nest to keep predators from getting the eggs, but allows the plover to freely move in and out of the exclosure. As you can see, they nest right on the ground in the sand in wide open habitat. Plovers usually nest somewhere between the wet sand and into the edges of the dunes. The snowy plover can be found throughout North America, breeding mostly on beaches, lagoon shorelines, and open salt pans. This small shorebird was listed as federally threatened in 1993 due to a decrease in population size and a decline in the number of breeding areas. They're about the size of a human fist. And as you saw in the video just a minute ago, the chicks are no bigger than a human thumb. They're basically little cotton balls with legs. The population that is listed on the endangered species list, stretching from Washington State south to Baja California, which is highlighted there in red, numbers no more than 2,500 breeding adults and has been steadily on the rise in the past several years. Snowy plovers are very similar to sanderlings, which is a type of sandpiper that feed along the wet sand right by the surf, chasing the waves back and forth. Take a note on the behavior of these foraging plovers and their location compared to the surf. And this is one good way to tell snowy plovers apart from sanderlings from a distance. Plovers stop, look around, chase prey, stop, look, chase, and repeat repeatedly, whereas sanderlings and other sandpipers are constantly moving and probing their bills into the sand. As you saw in the first video, snowy plovers nest on the ground in little depressions called scrapes. Most often, various debris on the beach are used to decorate or camouflage their scrapes, like dried kelp, crustacean shells, white pebbles, and even pieces of plastic sometimes. Here we'll get to see an up-close video of a female making a scrape. She gets on her chest and uses her legs to kick back sand to form that nest depression. Pairs will actually make several to a few dozen of these within a small area until the female decides which scrape she would like to lay her eggs in. So plover nests are fairly inconspicuous and are very hard to find. When we're surveying for nests, we look for scrapes, copulation angels in the sand, concentrations of plover footprints, or even a nearby plover parent. Sometimes the eggs are laid underneath overarching logs, like the one in the upper left here. But most often they're laid out in open sandy areas or amongst low-lying native vegetation, like the one pictured in the lower right here. For the next few slides, we're going to play a quick game of Find the Nest to give you a sense of how inconspicuous and vulnerable these nests can be. So we'll start with an easy one. Take a moment to scan this photo to see if you can identify the 3 white speckled eggs. So here are the 3 eggs nestled amongst some woody debris. So this nest is a bit harder to find. I'll give you a few seconds to look for the 3 eggs here. So this nest is hidden under a piece of driftwood, but still gives the incubating plover a view of its surroundings to keep an eye out for any incoming predators. So let's try this one. I'll give you a few seconds again here to find the nest. There's only 2 eggs in this one. So as you can see, the eggs are a bit harder to find when they're laid amongst similar sized rocks, which is great for camouflage and great for nest success. So once the female finds a suitable scrape to lay her eggs in, she will lay 2 to 3 eggs over a period of 4 to 5 days. Once all the eggs are laid, it takes on average 28 days to incubate until they hatch. The duties of incubation are split up by the time of day. The female incubates pretty much only during the day, and then the male incubates only at night. And it's important to note that snowy plovers are very sensitive to disturbance during the incubation period, meaning they'll get up and leave the nest temporarily if a person or a dog, off or on leash, walks by too closely, exposing the nest to the elements and predators. After 28 days, the chicks hatch and are precocial, meaning that they are born fully covered in feathers. They're able to start walking around within hours of hatch and are able to start feeding themselves once they are able to decipher the difference between a pebble and a tasty sand flea. Once the nest hatches, the female departs to go and find a new mate to make a new nest, while the male stays behind to raise the chicks for another 28 days. And then the male leads the chicks away from the nest, teaching them where and how to feed on the beach while protecting them from predators of all sorts. It takes about 28 days for the chicks to fledge, meaning they're fully independent of dad and are able to start flying. When snowy plovers see a predator approaching their nest or chicks, they'll often do what's called a broken wing display. So in this video, we'll see a female snowy plover pretending she has a broken wing to lure a predator, aka the biologist in this case, away from her nest. So if you're out on the beach and see a bird doing this behavior, it's a good sign that you should slowly back away from the area and leave the plover be. So we talked a bit about snowy plover breeding biology, And now you may be able to see why they're such a vulnerable species. They're specialists that strictly nest in sandy open habitats where humans recreate during the breeding season, and their nests are very exposed to the elements, as well as predators and human disturbance. There are three primary factors that are affecting their population recovery. Habitat loss is a big factor affecting nearly every sensitive and endangered species on the planet. Snowy plover breeding habitat is encroached by beach development and non-native vegetation like the European beach grass. As I said earlier, snowy plovers are sensitive to human disturbance, whether that's dogs running off leash in breeding areas or beaches becoming overcrowded with visitors. And then, of course, predation, primarily by common ravens, is a huge factor affecting population recovery. All three of these factors share one thing, and they all have varying levels of human contribution, direct or indirect. But don't fret, there are actions that everyone can take to help out, particularly when you visit the beach. For most all wildlife observations, including snowy plovers, please view them from at least 50 feet away. This gives them the space and minimizes disruption to their behaviors, whether they're roosting in a human footprint or sitting on a nest. I always recommend wherever you are traveling to look up information on the park you're visiting and to be informed on any wildlife or travel restrictions. For example, Point Reyes often has an advisory on their webpage when the snowy plover breeding season begins. In Point Reyes National Seashore and other areas on the coast, we set up fencing to protect areas where plovers are breeding. It's always important to stay out of those closures to give the breeding birds some space. And of course, practice leave no trace principles while visiting the beach. Leave only footprints. Garbage and food scraps can attract more predators than would usually be present in plover breeding areas, such as common ravens, coyotes, and skunks. Also, take down driftwood forts that you've built in the park, as they provide perches for peregrine falcons and ravens to look for plovers and their nests. If you bring a dog to the beach, please look up local seasonal restrictions that might be in place. Some beaches don't allow dogs at all, some do. When dogs are allowed, they are often required to be on leash. In Point Reyes, no matter the beach, dogs must always be on leash. It's so important, especially in plover breeding areas, to have dogs on leash, because even though we know dogs to be cuddly family members, plovers will react to them as if they are predators. And lastly, when it's safe to do so again, you might consider volunteering to share knowledge about snowy plovers with park visitors, or even sharing ways to protect snowy plovers in conversations with family and friends and via social media. In Point Reyes, we have a docent program to help with educating the visiting public and spreading awareness about nesting plovers. I'll leave you with one last video of snowy plover chicks on hatch day. And I want to thank you for tuning in tonight and for any actions that you've already taken to protect the snowy plover, and will continue to do so. Thanks, everyone. They're very clumsy once they hatch. They just fall over all over the place for no reason.